We are broadcasting now.
Supervisor Valle, nice to meet you.
Hi, Nick. Nice to meet you and everyone else.
I'm making Dan a co-host. 1 second. Yes. Okay, we are broadcasting.
Hey.
Evening, everybody. And we are, Mr. Clerk, we are broadcasting now, is that right?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you. Good evening or almost evening to everyone, board members, including many new board members to this wonderful Joint Powers Authority, Energy Authority, and to all those in the attendees list, welcome as well. This is a pleasant and happy inauguration day, a new day for the country. A lot of work to do, of course. And now I just lost my, hold on. Okay, Mr. Clerk, can we take the roll, please?
Yes. Albany.
Here.
Hold on 1 second. Berkeley.
Here.
Madam, Mr. Clerk, maybe since this is our first meeting of the year, as we go and people say aye, if they could say their name in addition to saying aye, that they're here this time around, that'd be great. So let's start over.
Okay. Albany.
Aaron Tiedemann here.
Berkeley.
Kate Harrison here.
Dublin.
Melissa Hernandez from Dublin here.
Fremont. Fremont. All right. Hayward.
Elisa Marquez, present.
Livermore.
Brittany Kick from Livermore, alternate tonight.
Okay. Newark.
Mike Hannon, present.
Piedmont. Piedmont. Okay, that's a no. Pleasanton.
Good evening, Kathy Narum here.
San Leandro.
Karina Lopez here.
Okay. Tracy. Tracy. Okay. Alameda County.
Richard Valle, present.
Union City.
Jaime Patino, present.
Emeryville.
Diane Martinez, present.
Oakland.
Dan Call, present, thank you.
And Community Advisory Committee.
Mary Sutter, present.
Yes. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk, appreciate that very much. And first item on our business after roll call, it will have general public comment. As always, this is expected to be public comment on items that may be of interest to this board, but are not on tonight's agenda. Mr. Clerk, do we have anybody signed up in advance for public comment?
Yes, we do. We have Alita Dupree and Jessica Tovar.
Okay, and if anybody else who's in the attendees list would like to give public comment, please raise your hand through Zoom now, and we'll include you. Okay, whoever the first speaker is, let's go.
Okay. Hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second.
No problem.
Alita Dupree, I am unmuting your microphone.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Greetings, Board Chair Dan Calvin, members, Alita Dupree for the record. My pronouns are she and her. Before I get into the general comment, I want to let you know that the web form to sign up in advance for public comment isn't working. For some reason, it's not recognizing email entries. So thank you for acknowledging me, but I wanted to raise that item for you. We're in a new year, and I think we're doing a lot of good things. I think last year, your board has made a lot of good decisions, and it's good to be back to once again engage respectfully with you. I want this to be an aspirational and productive year. And of course, today we have a new administration, which I am excited about. And I ask that your board and your leadership engage with the leadership in this new administration. So I think we're in for a lot of good things. Local development is something that I'm very passionate about. I was watching some videos about ships, cruise ships, and ships of the United States Navy. And I've toured some museum ships of the United States Navy and went into the kitchens. One thing I noticed is they're all electric. Some of the greatest cooking can be found on cruise ships and ships of the United States Navy. I served in the military, and some of the greatest meals I ever ate were prepared by military chefs. So I think it is reasonable to promote the development of all electric kitchens for homes and businesses to cut down on harmful emissions. And also, I believe that a better experience can be provided in the kitchen. Of course, solar and storage. We want to go big on that this year, especially as the summer comes. And we want to be ready in case there's power shutoffs. Batteries can be very helpful to us. So let's make this not just a productive year, but a really big one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I believe we had at least one more speaker. Is that right?
Yes, hold on.
Jessica Tovar.
Jessica Tovar, you've been unmuted.
Thank you. Jessica Tovar with East Bay Clean Power Alliance. And we are concerned about issue with community members, potential utility debt and inability to pay bills at a time where the pandemic and the economic fallout is really affecting our households in the East Bay and Tracy. So we were wondering if money such as for COVID relief could be used to prevent folks from defaulting and being pushed back into PG&E. And just recognizing that the CPUC program for debt relief is hugely flawed, where it requires people to pay their bill on time for a year or more in order to be considered for debt relief. And that means that the poorest and most impacted people and households will be subsidizing those who are being forgiven. So that is a huge issue right now, more than ever. Also, it has been brought up in the past, creating a program similar to SMUDS, where people who are struggling to pay their bills can have a fund that would prevent them from being sent back to the investor-owned utility PG&E. And I think a program like that is needed critically this year. Additionally, what's really important for our communities also is resilience. So getting solar and battery storage for critical community facilities such as resilient hubs in communities where people can go to not only get food from community gardens, but actually power up in the event of power shutoffs. And we've been experiencing those already with high winds and the planned power shutoffs from PG&E. And then lastly, I'd like to emphasize the need for the community innovation grants and having that money accessible for community groups to be able to do more microgrid projects and other projects that are needed in the community, and to really emphasize that the best benefits that can be given to the community are those that are created by the community. And so just to emphasize that that's what's needed now more than ever, considering the time that we are in. We don't have an end in sight to, this pandemic, and people are really struggling. We want to be able to get them the help that they need. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you for the comments. And I'm not seeing any other hands raised in our general public comment batch. So we're going to move on to our, where is that? Next agenda item, and that is our consent calendar. As always, if anybody has any, there are 3 items in the consent calendar. If anybody wants to pull an item off, please, now is the time to say so. Or if anybody has any questions that we can pose to staff without pulling items off, that's okay too. So I will look for any hands raised among panelists, among board members. Okay, before I entertain a motion, Mr. Clerk, are there any people who have signed up or have requested to speak on the consent calendar or any part thereof?
No one has signed up to speak to the consent calendar.
Okay, I will make a quick comment. I actually looked at the calendar for the rest of the year, and I noticed the September meeting of 9:15 is the beginning in the evening of Yom Kippur, and I would just request that we move that meeting to the following week, which is the evening of the 22nd of September. So I would ask that we make that change as part of the motion, unless there's any discussion or objection or question about that request. Okay, other than that, then I would entertain a motion to adopt the consent calendar items with that one change. If anybody would like to make that motion, now is the time to do so.
Mike Hannon from the city of Newark will move the consent calendar with the one modification as presented by the board president on the calendar for September.
Seconded.
Who was that? Was that Jamie? Who seconded?
Dublin will second.
I've heard 4 people seconded it. I don't know who seconded it first, so I'm going to let Adrian, our clerk, decide who seconded that. We have a motion and a second, and no other hands raised. So I would ask for a roll call vote on the consent calendar as amended.
Yes. My apologies. Who were the seconds?
There's one, but there's so many.
We just needed one.
We'll pick one afterwards.
Yeah, you could listen to the tape and pick one afterwards. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. Albany.
Yes.
Berkeley? Yes.
Dublin?
Yes.
Hayward?
Yes.
Livermore?
Yes.
Pleasanton?
Yes.
San Leandro?
Yes.
Union City,
Yes.
Alameda County,
Yes.
Emeryville,
Yes.
and Oakland.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Okay. Have any of the people who were...
I also needed to ask, I apologize for interjecting, that I wasn't called. So for
I
Fremont
wasn't either.
Fremont.
and Newark, yes.
And Newark.
Yes. Thank you.
So Fremont,
And City of Tracy, yes.
Newark votes yes.
yes, it passes unanimously.
Okay, yes, I was just about to say there are a few people who came in just after we did the roll call. So we have almost a full house tonight. That's great. Okay, so we're going to go to our next agenda item, and that is, whoops, hold on a second. My apologies. That's our CEO report. So Nick has some updates on our CEO report. Nick?
Right.
Yes, I'm pulling up 1 second.
Great. Thank you very much, Adrian. I'm going to just jump in while Adrian's pulling it up. We'll be holding our first executive committee meeting, actually not this Friday, but next Friday. That was a typo, so my apologies. No finance and administration committee meeting is planned in January. And similarly, we do not have one for the Marketing, Regulatory, and Legislative Subcommittee. There will be a meeting, I believe, in the next week or so to discuss appointments. And I think the plan will be to make the appointments at our next regularly scheduled board meeting. I would like to introduce a new member of the EBCE team. Sandra Subramanian is our new data engineer. He joined us in November. Sanjay grew up in a small but beautiful steel manufacturing town in Jamshedpur in eastern India. He attended schools and colleges in India and enjoyed a professional career in India for many years before moving to the Bay Area about 20 years ago. Prior to joining EBC, Sanjay worked as a data engineer for companies such as Coremetrics, SmartZip Analytics, NextTag, and NextRoll. Sanjay is quite the musician. Unfortunately, we have only been able to get to know Sanjay via Zoom, but I've really enjoyed seeing his collection of guitars and amps in his background. So we're really looking forward to having him join the EBC band. Sanjay is also himself a guitarist and a vocalist, and is passionate about photography. So welcome, Sanjay. Sanjay is a resident of Pleasanton, so soon to be a customer of EBC's as well. Next, we have a marketing and account services update. Annie, do you want to jump in and kind of give an overview of this?
Sure, absolutely. Good evening, everyone. So there's a lot going on for marketing and account services at the start of the year.
Speak up a little bit. You're sounding kind of distant.
Okay, sorry, on my computer audio. We have a lot going on in the first quarter for marketing and account services. Wanted to highlight two things in particular. So new community enrollment, that's for Newark, Pleasanton, and the city of Tracy, will open up February 1st. So that's 60 days before we start service. So what we did at the end of last year was an online survey of approximately 100 residents who lived within the zip codes of those cities, to just get a baseline understanding or a baseline number for general customer awareness, which will then compare against another survey that we'll do after a full marketing and outreach push as part of enrollment. So what we found was about 22% of respondents are in fact familiar with EBCE. This is before we've done any marketing. This makes sense given that their neighboring cities are already participating. The other feedback is very much in line with what we've seen from the currently served territory. And I'll just highlight that reliability and low rates were the most important things noted from the respondents in their electricity service provider. We will begin sending out notifications in the first week of February. We will basically drop those in batches every Monday, but they will go to every eligible customer within those 3 cities. The first notice is being mailed to all customers. It is in a branded envelope. It is a formal letter format in English, Chinese, and Spanish. We wanted to sort of go beyond what we did for our initial enrollment in terms of in-language outreach because we are limited in actually doing anything in person for this expansion of service to our new communities. The second notice will be a trifold oversized postcard. Again, we will have more content in all 3 of those languages. And then the last 2 print notifications will be oversized postcards with links to resources in language. I will note that after the first notice, any customers that have a valid email on file will receive the notice via email, and there are links to translation in that as well. I wanted to just call out, as mentioned here, we were awaiting the decision from the City Council in Pleasanton on their default product for enrollment. The council did make that decision last night, and Director Narum, if you can correct me if I get this wrong, my understanding is the decision was commercial and residential customers will be defaulted onto Brilliant 100, with the exception of any customer that is participating on CARE, FARA, or medical baseline. Those are the low-income qualifying discount programs or medical necessity discounts. Those customers will be enrolled on Bright Choice, and the City of Pleasanton has selected that for their own muni accounts, Renewable 100. So we'll be setting that up for the City of Pleasanton, and then for Newark and Tracy, their default is Bright Choice. The second update I wanted to highlight for the board is that the PG&E generation rates changed in January, effective January 1, as did the power charge and difference adjustment. So we have our rate sheets currently in process of being updated so that we adjust the EBCE generation rates so that they maintain the value proposition as proposed for our 3 products. Bright Choice at 1% discount, Brilliant 100 at parity, and Renewable 100 will continue to be a penny more per kilowatt hour. And that is inclusive of the change in the PCIA as well. We anticipate that those will get launched in our back-end billing system at the end of this week with an effective date of January 1. So any bill that with a start date after January 1 will see these new rates and the rate adjustment. And that is it from marketing and account services.
Kate?
Thank you, Annie. I really appreciate that report. I want to ask you about whether we have a landing page at EBCE for information about electrification. This is something we've been struggling with in Berkeley, is making sure people have the information they need. We need to get more customers on our side and more appliances on our side. So I'm wondering what kind of communication we have about rebates, state programs, deadlines for electrification in the state, et cetera.
Oh, I'm going to quickly look that up because I don't have it off the top of my head.
You know, I'll jump in. I'll jump in here. Yeah. We don't have a single comprehensive page for electrification. There are resources that we have, some limited resources related to some programs that we offer. Part of the challenge is there aren't, to my knowledge, that many great, really comprehensive electrification resources that are available more broadly. Some CCAs do offer some different resources that than we do, that point them in directions to largely PG&E resources. And to date, we just haven't highlighted those because they're not direct programs that we offer. But I think as we're considering rolling out more electrification campaigns, certainly we want to provide more information. But part of the challenge is it's hard to provide significant information because there are very limited. There are significant limitations on what actually is available today.
Okay. Yeah, it's just something we've been struggling with in Berkeley. As we roll out anything, we're trying to put it in one place. So like our recent BASO requirements, we added notification on the Berkeley Energy Savings Ordinance about where you might find all this information about what's available. It's just more of a promotion of the idea and not definitive legal advice or anything. So thank you.
All right, Nick, anything else you needed to add?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And next on our, oh, I'm sorry. Were there any public speakers on the CEO report item?
There are no public speakers for the CEO report.
Okay, I don't see any hand raised. Okay, we'll go on to the next item, and that is the Community Advisory Committee report. Mary?
So I have a very short report today. We had our meeting last night and we didn't have a quorum. So this is the first time in a bit that we haven't, but as you know, it's a 9-member board. We currently have 6 members and we have the application out and going. It's on the EBCE website until February 15th. And my only thing is I'm really hoping that everybody has the ability to reach out to members in their community and ask them to please apply, so we can start increasing the numbers on our CAC and have a quorum again, more easily anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just add because I know we have a handful of new board members. Nick, could you make sure that all the board members receive the new chart of division of how many spots we have on the advisory committee and how they're allocated and geographically? And then we are essentially asking all board members, especially in geographic areas where we are missing a slot, someone to fill the slot, to look and help recruit people to apply. And so, Nick, can you make sure all the board members get all that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we will be sending a note to everybody. Look out for an email from Alex DiGiorgio in the coming days, who is our public engagement manager, laying all these details out. And then I would expect you're going to be hearing some follow-up from myself, from Dan, from Diane, further encouraging you to reach into your communities and help recruit some members of our community advisory committee.
Okay, and are there any public comments on the community advisory committee item?
There are no comments for the community advisory committee item.
Okay, so I see no hand raised. And let's see, questions from, let's see, Councilmember Kick, is that the right way to pronounce the name? Kick from Livermore?
Yes, Kick. I just had a question for staff. If they could potentially create some sort of social media advertisement about the opening. I tried to look up on your current Instagram page about this opening for the Community Advisory Committee. In Livermore specifically, we have a very active volunteer and activist community that's very present on social media. So it might gain a lot of interest on this side of the East Bay. So if that's something that was possible, I think it might be easier to share, especially with the younger generation, to get them more involved if that was an option.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. We have done some posts, but you know, I think we could probably benefit from some more social outreach. So and you know what we'll do is when we do post them, we'll make sure that we send a note to the board with kind of a link to the post, so you can, you know, easily click through, and that'll take you to
an easy reshare option would be fantastic.
Yep.
Great, excellent suggestion. Thank you for that. I'm not seeing any other hands raised, and this is just an informational item. So without objection, we'll move on to the next agenda item, number 9. That's the California Community Power Agency JPA action item. Nick?
So I'll give the quick overview, and then Inder, if you want to jump in here too, because it's certainly something you've been working on a bit as well. The California Community Power Joint Powers Authority is a multi-CCA joint powers authority that we are seeking to form to allow CCAs to jointly pursue and procure a variety of projects. The JPA is being structured as kind of a fairly bare bones overall structure with very low costs, very low cost of entry, you know, roughly $10,000 a year to maintain the structural JPA. And really the work and the details and will all be in the project specific agreements. So as an example, a group of 8 CCAs, not including EBC, have decided to issue an RFP for long duration energy storage. And the intention is to use this JPA structure to allow for those 8 agencies to jointly procure this one very large project. All of the details around the project, the costs, the allocation of costs, the prioritization, credit issues, all of those are going to be negotiated and approved by the respective participating CCA boards within the project agreement itself. So by joining this JPA, what we're effectively doing is giving ourselves the ability to participate in these projects in the future. The governance of this JPA is a designated representative of each member CCA, and that designee will be selected by the respective general manager or CEO of the participating CCAs. And then for the project agreements, then each CCA will designate a lead for the individual projects that will have their own kind of sub-governance that is directed by the participating members. For the purposes of really the major decisions that this board may have to consider, any project that EBCE were to want to participate in would have to come back to the EBCE board for consideration and approval. So you are in no way, shape, or form delegating future authorities to me or to EBCE by joining this JPA. We're really, again, just creating the ability to consider future projects within the structure here. Inder, am I missing anything? Or does that
No, that's a really good summary, Nick. The only thing I would add is, and just to reiterate that this is really a skeleton JPA structure that allows the EBCE to participate or not participate in collaborative projects with other CCAs. That if we were not in a project agreement that was current, we would be able to withdraw without any penalties. So this is unlike other joint powers authorities that you may have sat on their boards or worked with, including the EBCE, where once you've joined, there are consequences for departing. It's a much more a looser structure and a much more flexible structure. So any of the specific projects that we would be looking into would be coming back to the board for your approval. And if the EBCE is not interested in doing any collaborative projects, there would be no consequences for either staying on the JPA as a nominal member but not participating, or in potentially withdrawing if we found that it was not helpful. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Nick, and thank you, Inder. Do everybody know, we have new members here. So Inder is our general counsel on contract, right? You're a contract general counsel, is that correct?
That's correct. I work
yes.
for the law firm Richards, Watson and Gershon, and I serve as general counsel for EBCE on a contract. Yep.
So thank you, and Inder is the board's general counsel as well as the entire agency. And let's see, let's go to public comment on this item. I believe I see at least one hand raised. Mr. Clerk? Adrian, you're muted.
Yes, Blair Beekman and Ulita Dupree have signed up for public comment. I am unmuting Blair Beekman now.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thank you for the meeting. Happy New Year and happy Inauguration Day to everyone. I'm a little late today. Sorry, I wanted to speak on public comment. Hopefully I can fit in my public comment into this item. Thank you for this item. Thank you. You mentioned last month that you were working on a joint powers idea, and in the beginning of January, the city of San Jose had in their city council process that they're creating their learning to be a part of the joint powers ideas as well. You know, all the local energy, community energy that's a part of it, it's nice. And to me, it speaks to the potential of what local community energy can be about in working together on projects and ideas with the community. And to have that flexibility, it's nice. And it really speaks to, you know, the efforts that I think, you know, I've been learning, you know, through the IPR reports of this past fall, that, you know, the efforts that need to be made towards local ideas in community energy. And the ideas of local just seems really important to myself. And to bridge this back to my initial public comment I was hoping to give today, I've been writing letters to yourselves, you know, for the past few weeks, asking about those IPR reports and, you know, the discrepancies that the graphs are showing of what to expect in the year 2023. And I know it's difficult to try to write a letter back to myself to describe that situation. I hope you can learn to do that. I think it's important to develop that sort of dialogue because it signals that you're preparing for a natural disaster to myself. And if that is the case, to work towards good local practices at this time, it's simply important to do. And let me see how much time I have left here. Yeah, it's an important thing to work on, and very important. And how we can set a course for the next 5 years, I think. And so I've been learning the ideas of, you know, in all the good preparations that we have to do towards renewable energy ideas, all that always has to include the ideas of preparing for natural disasters and like the upcoming wildfires, the possibility of an earthquake. And I hope in the following months that your IPR reports can learn to speak to the next 5 years of what we can work towards as local community energy and the focus of what local renewable energy projects can work towards. And those efforts, I just hope we're organizing ourselves in that way and that we can work towards those ways despite oncoming natural disasters. And it's those sort of efforts I hope you can learn to write back to myself about, and we can just have some beginning and conversations about the subject. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you. And next speaker, please.
I feel so much calmer.
Alita Dupree, you are unmuted.
Thank you, Chair Dan Calvin, members. Alita Dupree for the record, she and her. This is important, and I was excited when this item came up. You know, building a new infrastructure, it's expensive. It's an investment, but it doesn't come cheap. And as we involve ourselves in the sea changes of how we make and manage electricity, many of these works are often too big for one organization. And so we have the chance to partner with other organizations of similar mindset and goals, because I believe that the sum of the parts can be greater than the whole, that a JPA can allow us to do things that we couldn't do ourselves, and that if you took all the JPAs to try to do it themselves, this new JPA will allow us to do more. Because the matter of renewables and storage is urgent. And so I'm looking forward to hearing what this new energy storage project will be like. And hopefully it will be the first of many projects that will advance our cause for delivering clean and affordable energy to the EBCE district. So I respectfully ask for a yes vote on this item. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other public speakers in the queue. Board members, any questions or comments before we entertain a motion to vote? Please raise your hand. I am not seeing any questions or comments. Oh yes, I do see a couple. Okay, Councilmember Kick from Livermore, followed by Councilmember Hannon from Newark.
I just wanted to clarify who from this organization would be sitting on that new JPA? What would that structure look like? Some clarification.
Nick, that would be you, correct?
Either myself or somebody that I designate from staff.
Okay. And again, once again, all decisions on new contracts, new procurement would still have to come to our board if EBC is involved for approval. Councilmember Hannon.
Thank you, Chairman Kalb. In the memorandum, it states that the power is not intended to be a policymaker or advocate, though it may from time to time advance or support public policies in support of the purposes that do not conflict with interests of any member. If they take any policy directives, will we be advised of that in advance so we have an opportunity to weigh in on it, or will we be advised after the fact? Can you comment on that?
So as a board member of the JPA, we would have a say before any policy positions would be considered. And depending on that policy position and the delegations you have provided to me, I may just approve the position if it's within the policies that this board has already sort of set forth. But if it is not clearly within those policies, or if it conflicts with our policies, I would either vote no or bring it back to this board for consideration.
Great, I appreciate that. And if any policy decisions are made by the CC as you give your quarterly reports, would that be something that you would highlight then?
Yes. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I saw Supervisor Valle from Alameda County.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I saw the acronyms for all of the agencies, but can you tell me what jurisdictions those acronyms represent specifically, please?
Yes, of course. They are all other CCAs, and so let me run through the list. It is EBCE, obviously East Bay Community Energy. 3CE is Central Coast Energy. They are the CCA that serves Santa Cruz, from Santa Cruz down to San Luis Obispo counties. MCE, which is the CCA that serves Napa, Napa, Solano, Contra Costa, and Marin. SVCE serves Santa Clara County, all of Santa Clara County, but the cities of San Jose and Santa Clara. PCE serves San Mateo County. They are Peninsula Clean Energy. SCP is Sonoma Clean Power that serves Sonoma and Mendocino counties. SF Clean Power is the CCA that serves the city and county of San Francisco. San Jose Clean Energy is the CCA that serves the city of San Jose. And Redwood Coast Energy Authority is the CCA that serves Humboldt County, and I believe it's just Humboldt County.
Supervisor Valle, any other questions?
No, thank you very much.
Okay.
Felt like that was a good test, though. You
so Nick, there are a few CCAs that are in Northern California that are not part of this. Is that like YOLO, for example? They're not part of this.
Yeah. So the two Northern California CCAs that are not yet participating are Pioneer Community Energy, which is the CCA that serves Placer County, and Valley Community Energy that serves Yolo County.
Okay, so is it possible they may choose to join later if they're invited?
I think that's right. I mean, the rationale for participating now is, as a founding member, you have say over the founding documents, and as a follow-on member, it's sort of a take it or leave it proposition.
Would you, if I may, is this JPA and have any? Is it analogous in any way to the Northern California Power Agency, which encompasses several munis around Northern California?
In principle, it could do some similar things, and provide a similar set of services. One of the major services, say, NCPA provides to its members is scheduling. It schedules load and it schedules generation. And so currently every CCA, all of these CCAs at least either work with a third party, or in some, I believe, actually in all cases work with third party scheduling coordinators. So, in principle, there could be some economy of scale to say, instead of each having our own contracts for scheduling coordination, we could have a single contract for scheduling coordination between all of the participants and or the participants that want and CC Power. That is the kind of thing. So yeah, there are probably quite a few similarities between what this might become and what NCPA is currently doing. I think that's not an unreasonable expectation around the outcome.
Okay, I'm not. Thank you. I'm not seeing any more hands raised, so I'm happy to entertain a motion. Someone want to raise their hand?
So moved.
Okay.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Harrison from Berkeley.
I'll second. Hernandez.
Okay. Mayor Hernandez from the City of Dublin. Okay, we have a motion and a second. No more comments or questions. So, Mr. Clerk, let's take the roll.
Albany.
Yes.
Berkeley.
Yes.
Dublin.
Yes.
Fremont.
Yes.
Hayward. Hayward.
Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Livermore.
Yes.
Newark.
Yes.
Piedmont. Piedmont? No. Pleasanton.
Yes. Yes.
San Leandro.
Yes.
Tracy.
Yes.
Union City.
Yes.
Alameda County.
Yes.
Emeryville.
Yes.
And Oakland.
Yes.
Yes, the motion passes with attended.
Oops. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Nick will keep us in the loop, of course, as things happen with this new JPA. And now hold on. Now we're moving to agenda item 10, which is an informational report, a treasurer's report. Is this who's this? Is Howard?
I'll present on this. For the benefit of the new board members, good evening. My name is Howard Chang. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and the board appointed treasurer. And this is an informational item, obviously in my capacity as a treasurer, as it's the treasurer's report. And this is something that I provide every quarter to summarize our account balances, cash received, outstanding loan balances, as well as our aging for our receivables. So I'll start with the account balances. We have listed here our 6 primary bank accounts with River City Bank. I'll round everything to the closest 1,000. In our internal operating account, we have $1,640,000. In our operating fund account, we have $45,398,000. In our lockbox, which includes a $3 million reserve, we have $15,665,000. In our operating reserve fund, we have $40,965,000. In our money market and our insured cash sweep, those are both our interest-bearing accounts. In our money market account, we have $1,003,000. And in our insured cash sweep, we have $68,110,000, totaling $172,782,000. So our balances are increasing on a steady basis, and we are growing a strong balance sheet. The next section is the cash that we've received by month into our lockbox. So this is our customer revenues month by month. In October, we received $49,835,000. In November, we received $862,000. And in December, we received $39,735,000, a total of $133,432,000. Next page, please, Adrian. In terms of our credit facility with Barclays, we currently have nothing drawn. And then lastly, our customer delinquency or aging numbers. This is as of January 4th. You can see our various buckets. So the 30 to 60 day aging bucket, we have at $6,495,000. Our 60 to 90 day aging bucket, we have at $3,626,000. Our 90 to 120 day bucket, we have at $2,367,000. And then lastly, our 120 plus day aging bucket, we have at $12,396,000. These numbers have grown steadily, which is anticipated, and they've grown more so this year in light of COVID and some of the sort of economic stresses that our community is feeling, unfortunately. So we are monitoring this very closely. It is in line with our projections that we budgeted at the beginning of the fiscal year, in which we increased the expected write-offs and uncollectibles. So they are sort of consistent with that, but they have been increasing, and we'll continue to closely monitor these and report to the board. And that's it for the treasurer's report.
Okay, thank you, Howard. Do we have any public speakers on the treasurer's report, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, we do. We have Blair Beekman is raised his hand. I am going to unmute him now.
Hi, thank you. My comments for this item, Blair Beekman here. My comments for this item may be more appropriate for the next item, but maybe it could be an introduction for the next item that I just wanted to thank yourselves for learning how to navigate your practices in this time of COVID-19. And interestingly, you know, there's similar patterns with local governments and how they work and government agencies. And, you know, there were similar losses and similar needs of how to make up those losses. So, you know, the work that I first learned that how you were working at EBCE to correct, you know, the problems after the initial COVID arrived, I was able to go, you know, and when I would sit in on VTA transit authority meetings in San Jose, they were having the same issues, and they were having a little bit of a problem to try to connect how things can work well. And I was able to offer your work that you're doing, and you had a bit of steady control in how to deal with the issue, and it was real nice. And it made for, I think the VTA slowly worked out of their problems. And, you know, it was a little difficult for them, but they were able to navigate it, and it was nice. And I know Caltrain over in the peninsula had the same issues and actually the same sort of numbers in how to deal with their money issues. So, again, just a thank you that there was just a certain steadfastness and respect in how to not only handle the situation, but I think relate it to the public. That was really interesting and helpful and honest and straightforward to me. That thank you for that.
Okay, thank you very much. And I see no more speakers in the queue. Is that correct, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. We'll bring it back to our board, and we have a question or comment from Councilmember Harrison.
Yeah, just briefly, 2 terms I wanted to clarify. The operating reserve is separate from the cash reserve, is that right? So it's in addition to the item we're about to talk about?
So this operating reserve fund reflects the cash reserves that we've put in prior years. So that
great.
Slightly off because of some interest, I believe, but it virtually is the same.
Okay, but they're 2 separate numbers. We have an operating reserve, and then we have an ongoing cash reserve.
They are the same thing. So the financial reserve policy that we're going to discuss as the next item reflects the operating reserve fund that is in the treasurer's report.
Great, thank you. And then can you tell me what the insured cash sweep is? What is that?
Both that and the money market account are our interest-bearing accounts. So the insured cash sweep is just the form of the interest-bearing account that we actually have as a slight higher interest rate than the money market account.
Okay, and we keep the funds there to be available for operating costs as opposed to investing them in some longer-term vehicle? I'm a little confused.
That's correct. We have explored and evaluated other sort of interest-bearing accounts of some form, but I think there is more work that we can do to make sure we optimize that. But yes, right now we hold all of our cash in those interest-bearing accounts that we're not intending to use on a sort of a general working capital basis.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I have some more questions. Let me ask a follow-up question to that, if I may. On that insured cash sweep, just I believe I know the answer, but just to clarify for everybody, that $68 million pot there, that's not some risky, stock market kind of investment. That's a secure investment, correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
It is equivalent to what you would typically think of as a typical consumer or retailer as your sort of money market account. So very, very low risk use, and it is fully liquid to us. So it's not even tied up as you might have in a bond or an equity or even a CD. So it's very liquid, but it also, as a result of that, has far lower interest rate as well.
Got it. Okay, and next we have Councilmember Narum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Howard, I'm curious why there's such a range of cash received month to month for the quarter or the last quarter.
Sure. I just for clarification, you're speaking to the October, November, December sort of cash receipt numbers and why they're not more consistent. That really reflects the differences in our rates that change from season to season. So October primarily reflects summer rates. October and November actually both reflect summer rates, and then by December the rates go down to reflect winter rates.
Oh, okay, all right.
There's about a 2-month lag in receiving that cash from what we actually billed And so
okay.
despite it being October, it actually reflects summer rates.
Okay, thank you.
There we go. Councilmember Hannan.
Yes, Howard, thanks again for the report. Very well done. I appreciate it. You mentioned that the delinquencies we're seeing a slight increase in the delinquencies. It's always interesting to kind of look at that in perspective. Could you comment just briefly as to the percentage of customers that are currently delinquent as a matter of our total client base, so we have that kind of understanding? And then maybe, if I may suggest in future reports, that maybe you have a previous month's delinquency and maybe a previous year's delinquency, so we can see what that pattern might look like over the short term and the long term, if that's possible. Thank you, Mr.
Sure.
Chair.
I don't have the percentage off the top of my head, so that's something I'll have to go back and review and provide to you, but we certainly have that data very readily accessible. Happy to provide more details on this. I'll just note that in our Finance and Procurement Committee, that's where we would plan to speak to this in more detail, and actually we anticipate doing that in likely the next one, which is in March. So while I'm happy to include more details here, the intent was to try to keep this kind of short and sweet, and then provide more granular details in that forum if that's suitable to you.
That would be fine, Howard. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, that was an informational item. So without any more hands raised, we're going to go on to the next item, which, Howard, are you also presenting that?
I am, yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Great. And Adrian, if you can pull up that memo, that'd be great. This is item number 11. This is an action item related to an updated financial reserve policy. And in this item, we are recommending the board adopt the resolution to approve an updated financial reserve policy, which I'll review, to simplify the current reserve waterfall and bucket system into a single reserve. And this would preserve the fiscal year 2020 to 2021 reserve target, which is equal to the current reserve level. So the overall dollars don't actually change. For quick background, our current financial reserve policy was adopted by the board in June of 2018. And I'll detail that a bit, and then I'll talk a bit about what we've evaluated and what we are proposing in terms of the more streamlined, sort of simplified financial reserve policy. If you could go to the top of the next page, Adrian. I think this is a good snapshot to speak to our current reserve policy. Right now, we have it broken into 4 different reserve buckets. We have our operating and credit reserve, which is sort of that top tier reserve. And then we have a rate stabilization reserve, next to collateral reserve, and then finally a local development reserve. And you can see in this table sort of the waterfall that we have, the waterfall mechanics that we have in our current reserve. So we start with our minimum annual contributions on the column all the way to the right, where you would start by allocating 5% of the prior fiscal year's revenues into the operating / credit reserve. And once that is met, then you would kind of move to the next level, which would be, in this case, the rate stabilization reserve, which is 0.5% of the revenues. And then once that's met, you would go to collateral, again at 0.5% of revenues. And then lastly, you would go and fill your local development reserve bucket, which is 1% of revenues. Assuming you get through all of that, you would of course accumulate 7% of revenues. Then you would sort of start back over and then try to fill up your maximum annual contributions. And so then you try to get to 10% of revenues in your operating credit reserve. And then assuming you filled all of that, then you would move to your rate stabilization again and kind of work your way down. So the waterfall effect is intended to try to get the bulk of the money into the operating credit reserve, but then if you're able to meet that minimum, you kind of get to the next levels and then you cycle back through basically. So that's the kind of breakdown of our current our current financial reserve policy. If you look at the table towards the bottom of the screen, you can see a snapshot of what our current target numbers are and the current balance that we have. So based off the last 2 fiscal years, which were healthy years, you can see our target levels total a little over $288 million. So if you aggregate all 4 buckets, that's what our target level is. And then our current balance, you can see totals just a little over $90 million. and that makes up about 31% of our target. So that $90 million really is, that's really, actually one clarification I want to make to Director Harrison, who asked before, how does this sort of align to the Treasurer's report? And actually I misspoke a little bit there. So the reason that the reserve fund in that case does not actually show $90 million is because we want to optimize our interest-bearing accounts. And so we actually put more into our money market and insured cash sweep accounts in order to generate that higher, I shouldn't say higher, but an actual interest rate in those two accounts. There's an optimum level that you need to hold in those accounts. And so that's why you don't just put all of it actually into the insured cash sweep. So just for clarifying that prior question. So that's sort of a snapshot of what our current reserve policy is. If you can scroll down a little bit, Adrian, to that next table. In light of a few items, we did an evaluation of basically what the other CCAs in the market are doing currently. And so here you see a snapshot of a number of the larger CCAs, and in particular, most of the CCAs that have credit ratings currently. So we looked at MCE, PCE, Peninsula Clean Energy, Silicon Valley Clean Energy, Central Coast Community Energy, and Clean Power Alliance. Generally speaking, those are all the largest CCAs in the market. The first four are all PG&E territory CCAs. They all have investment grade credit ratings. And I believe these are the only CCAs that have credit ratings. And then CPA, while they don't have an investment grade credit rating at this time, we included them because they are, they're the largest CCA in California. So we did a comparison analysis of all of these CCAs and looked at their reserve policies to understand where they're at. All of them have a single reserve bucket policy. So really, really streamlined, very straightforward as we reviewed them. The only difference that we really saw in them was the minimum and maximum sort of target ranges that we've laid out in this table. So Silicon Valley, Central Coast, and Clean Power Alliance, they all actually established formally in their policy a minimum and a maximum range. And then MCE and PCE, they just sort of state a target. And then generally speaking, the CCAs have stated to their boards that while there are target numbers, we're going to certainly try to exceed those and build that over time. And for those that even have stated a maximum number, while they have put that formally in their policy, they have also stated in meetings that they would look to actually exceed that maximum over time and still continue to accumulate and build a stronger balance sheet, as that could lead to still a higher investment grade credit rating. So that's sort of a quick snapshot of what we saw with the various CCAs. Staff did this evaluation because we are looking to pursue a credit rating ourselves, hopefully in the short term. And so we wanted to make sure that our financial reserve policy reflected what credit rating agencies were seeing in the market, something that they understood, and something that they look favorably upon. And obviously, looking at those that have investment grade credit ratings, we felt like that was a good sort of a comparison set to evaluate. Adrian, if you can move to the next page. You can move to that final table, but let me speak to sort of what we're proposing here. So as I noted already, one of the primary reasons that we are proposing a more simple financial reserve policy structure is to ease the diligence process by both our energy counterparties as well as the credit rating agencies themselves. They've seen sort of the one bucket system. We feel that it would lead to both a quicker review process and a more favorable review process. In addition to that, it's just easier administration and kind of maintenance by staff, and really for the board and the community to understand as well. We have in prior years definitely had questions from both the board and the community about what is the intent of the reserve, how are we using it, what are the different buckets for, what are the mechanics of the waterfall. And so the proposed one bucket financial reserve policy would certainly simplify that for sort of easier understanding and administration of that. And then the other thing is, at the outset of our agency formation, we recommended a 4-bucket system because there were some specific uses that we wanted to make sure that we were disciplined in sort of saving money for. So when you look at those prior buckets that I had outlined, there's the general operating / credit reserve, and that's really a broad bucket intended to be utilized to build a balance sheet and for general use. And then there's a rate stabilization reserve, and that's really to maintain rates at favorable levels. And then that third bucket is a collateral reserve bucket. At the time, of course, we did not have a balance sheet when we first adopted this financial reserve policy, and we procured quite a bit of energy. And so we felt that there was a need to ensure that we were saving money for the purpose of being able to post collateral to our energy counterparties if needed. And then lastly, there's the local development reserve bucket, which of course, as a significant priority for our agency, we wanted to ensure that we were saving money specifically for those purposes. At this stage, we've built a very healthy balance sheet. Obviously, as you saw in the Treasury report, we have both very strong cash balances and we have very significant reserves as well already set aside from the last 2 fiscal years. So we feel that it's not as necessary to have the separate buckets, and the benefit of streamlining that for administration and for diligence by a credit rating agency sort of outweighs the need to continue to administer the different intended uses from the outset. I'll also just note that we have some duplication of being able to meet some of those needs, I should say. So in our rate stabilization reserve fund, we actually currently have a revenue deferral fund called the Rate Stabilization Revenue Deferral Fund. And so we set aside some of the strong surplus revenues that we have from the prior fiscal year, which allows us to sort of utilize that revenue deferral to maintain sort of a stronger financial statements for future years. And there's some confusion that can cause between a reserve fund and a revenue deferral fund. So we feel like eliminating that makes some sense. Then in our collateral fund, we actually currently have quite a large credit facility, and it has the ability to issue letters of credit now, which we previously did not have. And so where we do have collateral needs, we're able to very efficiently post letters of credit at a very low interest rate. And so we don't really need to post collateral out there. And then lastly, our local development fund, we've started to actually account for local development expenses separately within our annual budgeting process. So we actually look at those funds very differently. And if in prior years we don't spend all of that money, we generally try to save that money and earmark it for future local development program purposes. So we've started already accounting for that funding in a sort of a separate bucket. And certainly you'll see, and we have a separate item that sort of detail some of our local development activities that are going on right now, but we do budget for that somewhat separately. So felt that, again, the need for 4 different reserve buckets was no longer necessary. So really our proposal, just in a nutshell here, as you can see, is a 1 bucket system. So you no longer have the waterfall mechanics. And as a result of that, you certainly don't need sort of the minimum, maximum target levels, because that really was a facet of needing to sort of work through the waterfall itself. So with the 1 bucket system, you don't have that. And you can see right now, the 2020 to 2021 fiscal year reserve is based off of the 50% target level is based off of the 2020 to 2021 budgeted operating expenses. And so the 50% of those budgeted operating expenses equals just shy of $200 million. So $197,783,000. And then you can see our current reserve balance is just a little over $90 million. That was, of course, the total that was shown above in the table. And so we just sort of, show the sum here. And so that would put us at about 46% of our target. And then you can see the minimum level at 25% and the maximum level at 75%. Those 2 numbers laid out. So the minimum would be just a little shy of $99 million, and the maximum at 75% of our budgeted operating expenses for the fiscal year would be just a little shy of $297 million. And so at our current reserve balance, we are approaching the minimum 25% level very quickly. So with that, I will open up the questions and just close that. Again, the recommendation here to the board is to adopt a resolution that would approve an updated reserve policy that would reflect a single reserve bucket as described here, and it is one of the attachments to this document. And it would preserve our current reserve target at the same level as our current reserve policy.
Okay, thank you, Howard. Let's go first to public comment. Mr. Clerk, do we have any public commenters today?
Blair Beekman has his hand raised.
Okay, and if anybody else who is in the attendee queue is interested in speaking on this item, please raise your hand now.
Okay, so I'm unmuting Blair Beekman now.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman here. Thank you for this item. It does relate to my previous words about how we need to prepare our lives and budgets in this time of COVID and what you're doing around that. And that naturally leads to, you know, we're dealing continuously with the questions of nuclear and how nuclear often very much funds our energy programs. And, you know, this money is nuclear money. And we have to learn to really start to address how to distance ourselves from that and find new revenue sources and the uses of renewable energy as those revenue sources. That's what the next 3 years really should be about. Now, the IPR report of October 2020, item 19, page 14, I think it was, you know, gives some interesting graphs and statistics that describe that brown energy is going to go way up, a fairly sharp increase starting in 2023, while at the same time, there's going to be a fairly sharp decrease in solar and solar storage. Now that's an odd pairing. And the only thing I can make out of that is the idea that a possible natural disaster is coming. Now, you've nicely described that in your IPR reports. I don't want to exaggerate it or go wild with it. I hope I can learn to have a conversation with yourselves what exactly that means, and can, you know, what exactly can we expect in 2023, and why are the solar and storage numbers on such a decrease? So I hope we can have a letter writing conversation about that. I feel it's from that letter writing conversation you can develop better IPR reports in the next 6 months about what to look forward to in the next 5 years. And, you know, it's those efforts that how we talk about the future of the budget and really take the steps to distance ourselves anyway from nuclear and brown energy, because they're going to make excuses and a big push. It sounds like from these 2023 statistics that, you know, we can't leave your lives and that you're stuck with us and, you know, all that stuff. What concerted efforts can we make at this time? And how can you learn to explain that clearly to the community? I mean, that's innovation, and that's the good stuff. And that's the hopeful stuff of a community energy in its community. And you've taken some good steps already, it sounds like, with the IPR stuff. It's just a matter of how can you learn to begin to better explain that. So I wish you luck in doing that and how you can do that. And thanks for this item. Thanks for the steps we all need to take to leave nuclear. And I guess that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Appreciate it. And back to our board members. Councilmember Kick.
Hi, I was just wondering, and this might be better for an offline conversation, Howard, you let me know what would be best. I'm just wondering a little bit about what this reserve can be used for in terms of serving the communities that we provide energy to better. So for example, if we had, you know, predicted COVID, could a portion of this reserve go to lowering energy rates for the hardest impacted communities? And obviously we can't undo the past and fix COVID, but we can plan for future potential economic hardships for our communities. And is that something that is possible with these types of reserves fund?
I think that, you know, in the end, the reserve funds and the allocation of the reserves is going to be, you know, the decision that the board will make. But these reserve funds are really meant to sit as reserves that we don't touch. Among other things, the rationale for building these reserves is to hit certain target levels for on our pathway to getting an investment grade credit rating. And so maintaining those cash reserves at those levels is important to maintain the credit rating. Obviously, in situations where, the funds must be used, they're there and they can be used. But I think these are not sort of funds to be easily earmarked. These are really funds that are to be used, when we don't have any other alternative.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Harrison.
Yeah, okay. I admit to being a bit lost. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions and hope I can understand what we're saying. Right now, we're at this number of $90 million, and the 25% level would be about $98 million. But I think you indicated we weren't changing the reserve level. Can you say a little bit more about that? Because it sounds to me like we are.
So the $90 million is what we've currently put into reserves. Mm-hmm. And each year after the fiscal year period, we would look at surplus revenues and allocate additional reserve amount. And so we did that previously, obviously, for the 2019 to 2020 fiscal year. And we're currently sitting in 2020 to 2021. And so at the end of the fiscal year, after we've completed our audit, we'll do the same thing in probably the fall time frame of 2021. So the $90 million is our current balance. And then the other numbers that I highlighted are the percent of our annual operating expenses. So 50%, that $200 million target number reflects 50% of our projected fiscal year's operating expenses. And that is a sort of a reasonable target to say, basically, we want to save up to be able to pay for half of our year's expenses. So that's what that $200 million level reflects. And then the minimum max is to say we really want to try to keep above the minimum, which is $98 million. And the maximum is what we're sort of trying to strive to be. But that's sort of a bookend of what we think is a reasonable place to be. Practically speaking, you do see some variability across the different CCAs. Some of them have minimum maxes and some of them don't. The minimum max don't really serve too much value, to be honest. It's not as if they sit there and say, well, you have to be between there, because we're not between there right now, right? We're a new agency to build our way up to there. And similarly, the max doesn't necessarily state, once you get there, you just start spending everything, because credit rating agencies still say, the expectation is you continue to accumulate and build a strong balance sheet. Now, certainly there's board discretion to make that decision or not, but many of the CCAs, despite even putting a max, have said, we still plan to try to accumulate more, but that's sort of a max target, and we'll revisit that as a board, of course. That's the intent of what those numbers reflect. Does that answer your question?
A little bit, but I'm wondering, right now we're being asked to do two things. One is to collapse all the reserves into one, which I understood, and the other is to make a change in our target or not to make a change in our target. It's kind of a yes, no.
No, it doesn't make a change to our target. Okay. So Roman numeral 2 under the recommendation is preserving our target level. So the target, that 197,783,000, that is the same number we had in our prior reserve policy. And the target number then we would look to put towards our reserves after this fiscal year, it doesn't really change the aggregate number that we put to reserve. So none of that actually changes between our current reserve policy and what is being proposed right here.
Okay, and then if we were to try to hit this number of 99 million as opposed to 90 million, would that come out of the local development plan? In other words, if we were not looking at this $99 million number, would it change how much we spent on local development?
I think the min number of $99 million is really just sort of establishing as a board that we're really trying to work very hard to get to that $99 million. Right now, there's nothing we're allocating towards reserves. So the conversation we'll have about changing the $90 million, which is our current reserve balance, that will occur in probably the October, November timeframe of this year, We'll see how we perform this fiscal year, if there even are excess revenues and what levels that is. And then we'll talk about what do we want to put add into our reserves based off of financial performance. That could increase the $90 million to 95, to 99, to 110. Okay. It's hard to say at this stage. It looks like we are accumulating, surplus revenues, but certainly that's a good sign. But I wouldn't say that hitting that minimum is sort of the intent of, oh, we got to get to $9 million.
Okay, so it's not like we can't spend anything on local development until we hit that number. It doesn't preclude us doing something different on local development. Okay, that's correct.
And just to be clear, okay, we already have budgeted funds towards local development for the fiscal year, so that is completely unchanged from what the board approved from last June.
Of course, we could have more there, but we'll talk about that next. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Valle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Following up on some of the questions that have been asked, and being this is my first full meeting, does the structure of are we a commission or committee? I'm sorry. As a body, are we a commission?
We're a board, I believe, a board of directors.
The structure of a board, do we have a finance committee?
We do. We have a finance and procurement subcommittee.
Great. So does the finance committee have a policy for the entire board about investment policy? And do we have a policy on where we keep these funds? For example, locally based banks in Alameda County versus multinational corporate banks. Do we have those kinds of policies in place? And then getting back to board member Kick's question, the allocation of these funds and how we use them, and whether or not we have discretion. Do we have policies in place on that issue as well?
So I can try to address those, and obviously if others have more to add, please do. As it relates to sort of discretion to utilize these funds, the financial reserve policy itself is where it sort of states that use of these funds is under board discretion. So that is explicitly stated in the policy that's part of this item. And then I think that answers your second question. Your first question around how do we hold our cash? What bank account? What banks? Whether the locally based banks? I believe it's in our JPA. It states that we will hold our funds in interest-bearing accounts. But low risk interest-bearing accounts. It does not go as far as to say, where we hold those, exactly what type of interest-bearing accounts, what kinds of banks. But early in our inception, of course, we had an RFP for banking services. And as part of that, the board sort of voted and approved the various banks that we work with. So our bank is River City Bank, a local bank, though not an Alameda County-based bank. But as I guess new information for you, as you weren't part of the board at that time, we did not have any local Alameda County-based banks that proposed into that, unfortunately. We have, I will note, we have had discussions with a number of local banks since that time, just to look at opportunities to, continue to hold some of our funds in some of those banks, and have had sort of mixed responses on that. Happy to follow up on sort of more details, either in this forum or perhaps in the finance and procurement subcommittee forum. So we have taken some actions there. We've done some evaluation. There is not a more detailed policy that says we must, as an organization, hold these funds in this exact type of interest-bearing account.
I'll also note River City Bank is a large holder of commercial paper in Alameda County, and all of the funds in I believe it's our ICS account, are currently allocated in Alameda County, or are associated with lending that is occurring in Alameda County. So not a Alameda County-based bank. They do have a branch, I believe, in Walnut Creek in San Francisco, based in Sacramento, but a California community-based bank. So, they abide by all of the rules and regulations that apply to community banks as opposed to multinational banks. And they do actively invest in Alameda County.
Howard and Nick, let's put this topic on the agenda for the next finance committee, whenever that meets in a month or two, just as a discussion topic. And if the finance committee feels a need to raise something back up to the full board, by all means, that should happen. Okay, next I see Mary Sutter.
So thank you, Chair Kalb. For those who are new, the Community Advisory Committee, we are a non-voting person on this board, representative of the CAC. And so typically when I make comments during this period, it's because the CAC has taken a position and wants to talk about something and say something, or we know that so many people believe one way or the other. Because we didn't have a quorum yesterday, I'm not speaking to you with that hat on right now. This is my personal hat. This is something that I mentioned to Nick and Howard when this came up in our meeting last night. I worry about collapsing it to a single one without having a carve out for the local business development or local development business plan effort. Previously, it was going to get to about 48 million. When we had it fully funded, that was kind of the number that everybody thought was a good thing. That would have been a chunk of money that was available for something to do with local development. As people turn over on this board over time, because it would take a while to get there, people are going to forget, I think, that money had an original purpose for this, over and above the 13 million that we have right now for the currently ongoing programs and projects that are part of the local development business plan. The other thing I would say is I understand that these other CCAs have one reserve fund. They also don't have a local development business plan. You know, we have something that is different from what they have. And so I personally feel like it needs to be separate to enable us as a board, as people change in and out over time, to say in 5 years, let's use this large amount of money for something that as EBCE we can do. And there may be reluctance to take that amount out of a larger bucket for that purpose, unless it is expressed somehow. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Nick, do you have any comment on that last comment?
Yeah. So, you know, I think generally the approach that we are proposing here, we feel does not diminish current or future local development investment, because fundamentally, to be able to pursue the kinds of infrastructure investments that we want to make in the East Bay, first and foremost, we need to establish a good credit rating. And it's that credit rating that is going to underpin our ability to, say, issue future bonds that at the lowest interest rates possible that are going to support big investments locally. And you know, the feedback that we have very clearly gotten from the rating agencies is they look at your total cash picture and they want a simplified reserve policy to be able to assess your total cash picture. If you start to segregate these accounts, they may not necessarily count that cash towards your total reserve, which in turn may diminish your ability to get a credit rating. So, you know, perhaps there is a bit of a tension. I think generally there isn't, because of our organizational focus, you know, now in the future on investing in local projects, and the overall financial health and strength of EBC is what's going to allow us to do more of that. And I think that this simplification is going to enhance our overall financial outlook.
Thank you. I have a question. I see there's one more hand in the queue, but I have a question, Nick. Do you know how many years it took once other CCAs came online serving customers before they got their credit rating, their strong credit rating, from the agencies? How long did it take them? And are we on par with that? Or are we a little behind
Yeah,
schedule?
we're on par. So the best comparables are 3CE, PCE, and SVCE. Those are Central Coast Energy, Central Coast Community Energy, hence the 3C, Central Coast Community Energy, Silicon Valley Clean Energy, and Peninsula Clean Energy. They each received their credit ratings roughly around the time we are going to be seeking to receive ours. So at that, about 3 years of operations. So we're on track. If we were to receive a credit rating before the end of this fiscal year, as an example, we would be getting it about the exact amount of operating history that those three have. And if it pushes some time, we still are in line with those three.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Kick.
I just had another question kind of connecting some comments that I heard. So my comment about what can it be used for? And then what if we collapse these things and certain things get forgotten about as board loses its memory because we've changed over time. In that reserve policy, without specifically carving out percentages, would it be possible to be more specific rather than saying board has discretion, saying board has discretion and prioritizes XYZ as voted on by this board in this year, and then other boards could potentially update that, just so we don't lose that sense of priority that other boards may have put forward in the past?
So I would just say in response to that is at least the norm amongst other CCAs is not to add that level of specificity, and the intent of the sort of operating / credit reserve is it should be saved for a rainy day. At least that's how the credit rating agencies sort of look at it, meaning you really want to save that money and you don't want to spend that money. So you could lay out some intended uses, but those would sort of be intended uses for a very rainy day. If things went really very poorly, then you would look to sort of seek to use funds from the credit reserve. And so while you could do that, it's not. I don't think it's perhaps getting to maybe some of the areas of priorities that you are looking for. If you wanted to prioritize things for, say, local development or other spending, I don't think that's how the credit rating agency will look at it. The one thing I would just highlight is the reserves in general, whether they were collateral, rate stabilization, or local development related in our prior reserve bucket, even in the prior or the current finance reserve policy, I should say, it's not intended to, we're not intended to spend that money as the reserve policy is laid out. That money is to be saved for a very rainy day, and particularly for the local development reserve, which I think is one of the areas of kind of greater concern here in this discussion, is even those funds were not intended to be spent. It was intended to be sort of leveraged, right? So you accumulate that, and you may have some amount of interest that you get year to year that you then go spend, or you are able to actually, you can loan that out and still recover those funds, or you actually use it as sort of collateral in building another sort of facility to then utilize those funds and leverage those dollars. And so, even in the prior iteration, those funds were not intended to be spent. Of course, they are at the discretion of the board to do that, but I think the intent of that reserve policy is really to hold it and save it as an individual with their sort of savings. And sort of at least what Nick had noted is by getting an investment grade credit rating, you're actually able to go basically leverage funds more cheaply in other means, and then you can go earmark those funds in other ways. And so as we budget year to year for different programs, whether it's local development related or otherwise, we don't actually look at a reserve policy in any ways to say, well, what can we put towards, say, local development, or what can we put towards, say, marketing? It's all based off of sort of the fiscal year's finances, and everything put in the reserves are really the surplus revenues that we put in there to date.
I think one additional point, with the reserves, and you saw these ranges. The reserves really are meant to, you want to get to a certain target reserve level, and then at that point thereafter, you no longer contribute to those reserves, right? And if you're generating excess revenue, then you really say, okay, in this year we generated $15 million of net revenue, and we have achieved the necessary reserve levels to maintain our credit rating. Well, then that's $15 million that we can allocate to X, Y, or Z uses based on the direction of the board. And I think that's really
I want to clarify, I might be confused about how something was paid for in the past. So when the board chose to not go with nuclear energy and simply pay the difference, subsidize the difference between the cost between PG&E and EBCE, that was not reserve funds. That was regular budget funds.
Those are current year costs.
Okay, I was trying to figure out what's rainy day enough. My understanding was that was potentially reserve funds, and how is that rainy day enough? But COVID would not be. So that clarifies.
I think when we think about rainy day, it's, we have expenses that we do not have current revenues to pay for, right? It's we have an energy expense. We do not have enough revenue coming in to cover an energy expense. You have to service those receivables.
Right.
And so you would say, well, we can default or we can pay. Well, we're going to pay. That would be an example.
Okay. Just clarifying. Very different reserve policies than some other boards. So I'm just trying to get them all straight. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Let's see, another question by Councilmember Hannan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sensitive to Mary's comment regarding the local development fund. And even though we're collapsing these reserves on our financial statements, will we see, for example, a separate line item on the budget document that shows the money that is set aside for land development, for example?
So, in each budget, we earmark funds for local development. And so those would be, you could see those in our budget statement. But they would not be specifically, reserves would not be specifically identified as, for one use or another.
In the budget document?
In the reserve, if you were to look at our bank account, right? If you were to look at our,
I'll just say in our financial statements and in our budget, you don't even see our reserves.
Right.
Period. The reserves are really a policy. It's an accounting treatment more than anything else.
Right.
So the financial statements don't really reflect your reserves one way or the other. It sort of shows up as cash, basically.
It's really the budget. The annual budget document is where you would sort of see how we intend to use funds, and it shows up as cash segregated into a handful of bank accounts, and they're in certain accounts for certain reasons. And then, for the most part, we pay for things as we go out of revenue. From one month to another, we might have more revenue in one month and less revenue in another. And so that's being, really covered out of working capital. So really our annual budget is really being managed out of working capital.
Yeah, and I would just clarify, when we go into a particular fiscal year and we present a budget to the board for approval, that budget reflects the whole fiscal year, and that is what the staff looks to execute on. If we feel that we're going outside the bounds of that established budget, that's where we would go back to the board for approval for a necessary change. That budget does not reflect really. It doesn't have any intended use with the reserves. The reserves really are, there for savings. And so the budget is all really a forward-looking projection of this is what we'll earn in revenues, and therefore this is what we have earmarked for spending. And it includes, hopefully, some level of surplus revenue there that allows us to then make sure that we're able to weather any volatility in the current fiscal year's budget. And hopefully a bit over and above that, then we can then put towards our reserves and savings, at the end of the fiscal year.
Sure, and that's where that conversation then would occur, is that once a year when we look at our revenues, do we have additional revenues that we can put into the reserve buckets? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and let's see here. We have Councilmember Lopez from San Leandro.
Thank you very much and good evening. Two things. First of all, I did want to weigh in on the question that was asked previously on local banking. And while I've heard in the past and I appreciate the relationship that's already been established, I would be interested in that conversation and the exploration of having something that would be local to this county. That would be firstly. And then secondly, I'm wondering what the projection is to reach the 50%, the timeline projection to reach the 50% target. Would that be within the next 6 months or so? And when that target is reached, is that reported back separately as a, to the board, or are we waiting for when the budget cycle comes to the board to go over that number?
So in terms of our allocation to the reserve, that happens once annually, typically after we complete our financial audit. So in the fall, where we have a very crystal clear picture as to what our surplus revenues are, and we bring it forward to the board for approval to allocate funds into the reserve. And so that's where you would certainly see a change to the current roughly $90 million balance. There are no allocations to the reserve policy outside of that in the middle of the year, as we're still trying to execute on the previous budget.
What is the projection? What is the timeline projection, just from a practical perspective? Is that looked at all, sort of an ongoing basis?
So I'll lay out some facts based off of historicals at least. So our current reserve balance is around $90 million, and that's based off of more or less two full operating years, and they were very pretty consistent performance in those 2 years. So we put about $45 million each of the last 2 fiscal years. I think this year's projected budget was much closer to a break-even or balanced budget. Certainly, as we're continuing to track things, and we plan to bring a mid-year budget update in the February board meeting, so you'll have a clearer picture then. I think we're performing a little better than a balanced budget, but we are not anticipating surplus revenues in the $45 million level. And so, we're currently at $90 million. Our target is around $200 million. Rates have quite a bit of volatility year to year, which really are a big factor of what our sort of headroom is and what surplus revenues we get. And so, we have $110 million in order to hit that target level. Prior years was $45 million. This year we're projecting something closer to a balanced budget. So, I think practically speaking, we're talking about sort of multiple years before we will hit that target reserve level.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And let's see, Councilmember Harrison.
Yeah, I'm reflecting on what Ms. Sutter had to say, and I think that I would be in favor of collapsing 3 of these 4 categories and not the local development category. I think it's a moral statement, and we're not like other CCAs. That's why we're different. And I think it's important that we sort of show that in some way. So I would like to suggest an alternative to this. It's only a small percentage of the reserve. We're not spending it. I don't see why banks would take that differently. It's still set aside in reserve, and it's about 7% of the total amount. So to me, it seems important to maintain that statement about local development. That's what we told the residents of Berkeley, at least, about why we were doing this. It wasn't just to have us be in control, it was to have us drive a new destiny for us. So I'd like to suggest we do something slightly different, or I may just abstain from this item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any more hands raised. Now I do see, okay. Mayor Martinez.
Hi, I just want to thank everyone for all of your thoughtful comments tonight, and just reflect that many of the concerns that have been shared tonight were brought up as we were developing the policies that go with our investments and with our reserves. For instance, we did really want to use a local bank. I think that's always something that we can and should explore to see if there are banks that would qualify for all of the needs that we have. And that was the issue at the time when we chose the bank that we did go with. I heard a lot of comments tonight that lead me to believe that many of you would be good candidates for our finance committee. So please don't be surprised if you're called upon and tapped to please bring those opinions and great ideas with you to the committee level, because I really think that's the place where these ideas should be explored. In terms of getting a good credit rating, that's something that I've been an advocate of from the beginning of the onset of this agency. I think we can do really, really big things with a good credit rating. And it's not just reflective of the money that we actually save in reserves, but leveraging that money into large local projects that do all of the things that our local development business plan outlines, and touches upon all of the pillars of equity and green energy and local jobs that we all desire, and that does set us apart from other CCAs. So if it's the desire of the board to explore this more, I would implore that if we have time, and I'll defer to staff on that, if we have time to send this to committee for further discussion. But if the board is willing to make this move, I would only feel comfortable with adopting the resolution as set forth by staff. If they're not comfortable with that, then I would like this to go to committee for a deeper discussion and not separate anything out tonight, because I think that would be a hasty decision in light of what we've built up already. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I see Jason from the staff. Did you want to share some information?
Yeah, yes, thank you.
Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Chairman Calb. I'm Jason Bartlett. I'm the finance manager with East Bay Community Energy, and I've been working with Howard and Nick on developing this. And I also I'm one of the primary developers with budget development, and also oversee the audit and help with developing the recommendations for reserve funding. So my knowledge in this is pretty deep, and there's some things that I've been hearing that, and I just want to be sure that they're addressed clearly. One is that local development is now operating as its own kind of special fund. And this happened in September. The board approved that the local development accounting treatment be done as a separate fund. And so it has its own balance that kind of carries over year. Whatever's not spent gets carried over to the next year, and more funds get allocated each year through revenues. And so, and if concerns that local development will not meet its targets, that system has been set in place. And we will see that with the new, when we go into budget development this year, we will see that broken out separately. The other thing that I would like to point out is that I've also been hearing a lot of discussion about local banks, and that is an ongoing project that we did start looking into last year, I believe in the last quarter. And we have targeted some local banks and have reached out for initial information. That's as far as we've gotten. And so just to know that is top concern of ours. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate your work and your comments. I want to make a few comments myself, and then we have another person in the queue, Supervisor Valle. My suggestion, and of course it's the will of the entire board as to what we do, my suggestion is, because it is very important that we get the good credit rating. And no one likes the fact that these credit rating agencies have the power, no pun intended, that they have, but they do. And I think it's incumbent upon us to support the staff's effort to seek that and achieve a strong credit rating. And after we do that, and that will happen soon enough, maybe a year after we do that, if at that point we want to consider and discuss and research the possibility of segmenting out a portion of the reserve that could be identified as local development, we could discuss that then, and that may make sense then, and there'd be less risk to do it then in terms of our credit rating. I wouldn't want to do that before we get that credit rating. That's why we're making these changes today, or propose to make these changes today. So that's my suggestion, is to hold off that discussion about segmenting something out in our reserve on paper, at least, till after we achieve that credit rating, which is so fundamental to being able to procure clean energy at a good rate, a good cost. So that's my suggestion. I see another person in the queue, Supervisor Valle.
Thank you. I don't believe that any of us are working toward a different end. I think we're all talking the same thing. We all want the same thing. The question is, how do we get there, and how do we thoughtfully take into consideration that these are the public's funds, and we have a responsibility to do our very best to allocate them, invest them, keep them local, and create micro businesses potentially, if that's a possibility. I also understand that the county, believe me, the importance of having a very strong credit rating. Alameda County has one of the best credit ratings in the state of California among 58 counties. We worked really hard to get there. So I don't think anybody on this board has any other motive than that. I like the vice chair's suggestion that unless this is time sensitive, that we should kick it back to the finance committee, let them have a more in-depth conversation, get into the details. I'm willing to volunteer my service on that committee and bring whatever I can to that conversation. But again, if it's not time sensitive, I'd like to see the conversation continue at that level with everything that we've just talked about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Howard, can you maybe speak quickly to the timing considerations? Because, you know, I think that makes a lot of sense, Supervisor Valle, that, you know, this and a number of our policies, we're going to want to be able to engage, especially with so many new board members who are going to, you know, you all bring new and, you know, great perspectives that we want to start to integrate as we develop these policies. But I think the reason we were bringing this is because we are starting the process we are initiating the process, I think, imminently to go to the rating agencies. And, you know, if we delay a month or two, that just delays that process. But Howard, maybe if you can speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. We're trying to accelerate the process at this stage, seeing the success of some of the other CCAs in obtaining investment grade credit ratings. And so we're wanting to make this change now so that we can engage in those conversations and make sure that we have an established policy. I would be very hesitant to go forward and start those conversations and then, you know, 2 months later, then change the policy. I think that would actually be quite disruptive. I would recommend actually holding off entirely on the process while we're having those additional conversations. So I think what that does is really just, it delays our engagement with any of the credit rating agencies while we're doing that. I think our next FAT meeting is scheduled for March. And so it would probably put into the March kind of April timeframe to then re-engage.
Okay, thank you. So I think now people are aware of our options in terms of decision now or the possibility of deferring this or referring this to our finance committee and then coming back to the full board right after that. And let's see, Councilmember Kick and then Supervisor Valle and then Mayor May.
Just really quickly, what is the consequence other than just time? Is there any other consequence to putting this off? Does that time change what we would be able to do as a group significantly?
I think that one of the significant aspects of that time is just that we are constantly in negotiations on long-term power procurement contracts. And so that's the question that is asked on us from every developer that, every energy supplier that we speak to is, well, what's your credit rating? And I think there is, as other CCAs obtain that rating, there's some benefit to that, but there's also sort of some risk to that, because then there are more options for them to sell to other CCAs that have a credit rating. And so, the risk is time. The risk of that time is it could have some implication to cost, because we don't have a rating. Now, with that said, there's certainly no guarantees of when that rating will occur, if we'll obtain that rating regardless of this change.
What I would say in this particular case is we are in the process, and I would expect you'll be getting more of an update here in the next month or so. But we're currently running a very large procurement for new renewable energy projects. I would expect that we're procuring several $billion in contract value. And one of the reasons to move quickly towards the credit rating is to try to establish a rating before we execute our contracts. Because when we're negotiating our power purchase agreements, if we're doing so as a rated entity, there are concessions that we're going to be able to extract from our counterparties that we might not be able to extract, or there are costs that we may have to incur as an unrated entity that we might be able to avoid as a rated entity. And so there's no guarantee that even if we were to adopt this policy today, initiate the process, very quickly, that we'll get there, but we have a chance. And I think if we delay this 2 months, then we will not have a rating by the time we're in contract negotiations. And so, it's hard to say exactly what the magnitude of that expense is. We have executed hundreds of megawatts of solar and storage and wind projects without a rating. There's no doubt that it will benefit us.
Okay, and Mayor May.
Yes, hi. I've been listening to the in-depth discussion, and certainly with this new additions of our board members, there's a lot more insight. I have seen that we have negotiated contracts in the past, and I certainly recognize how having a rating could be beneficial to us. I noted that you mentioned that the next meeting is in March. Is there any way to facilitate the meeting being earlier, and so therefore allowing a little bit of time to address the concerns that are being heard with as many new members as we have participating currently on this board, but then also allowing us then the ability to be responsive to the need for us to be able to go out to bid. So a compromise between those two again, in terms of rather than waiting to March, here we are in January, is there any way to do it in February and then allow us both time to consider these options as well as to be still agile enough to be responsive?
I would say we certainly can. And, that may be the best approach. I will just say, if we wait until February, again, I think the likelihood that we'll be able to get a rating before we're in contract negotiations is low. But, again, that's not if we can't do this, it's not somehow deeply detrimental to the agency. It's just starting quickly now will provide some incremental benefit, but if we can't do it, I think we're going to be okay as well.
Do you think that when we're doing the contract negotiations, the fact that we do have a policy that is defined, that even if we haven't gotten the approval, just having a policy that's clearly defined would be of interest to the parties with which we're negotiating, to show that our stability, where we may not have the rating, have cognizant efforts in terms of how we consider this?
I don't think so. It tends to be fairly binary. You have a rating, or you don't have a rating.
Yeah,
And
the energy suppliers and developers are not necessarily, doing that level of diligence to look at your reserve policy.
Okay.
Often it's because what they're reflecting are terms that their lenders have provided to them, or their tax equity investors. And so these are just sort of very black and white parameters that a bank that's going to be lending for a big project has said is, okay, if they are credit rated, it's A, and if they are not, it's B. And then, we end up trying to negotiate from B as close as we can get to A, but if you don't have a rating, you're not at A.
Well, hopefully with the climate being it is, the people that we're working with will have some time to look at those who are achieving the ratings, because I think that's certainly everything in the market currently, the way things are quite volatile. So I would support, if possible, having that compromise. I don't know what my fellow board members want to do, but I've been listening with great interest on everyone's perspectives, and I've certainly taken a lot of notes on that.
Okay, thank you, Mayor May. I'm not seeing any other hands in the queue. What we do need a motion to do something. That could, the motion could be referred to committee, the motion could be adopted as proposed by staff. The motion could be anything, really, almost anything. I see Councilmember Hannan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did listen, as Mayor May did, to the comments that went on. I think we have a number of opportunities moving down the road to make policy changes through the Finance Committee. I'm willing, though, to move the staff recommendation because I think it's important that we get that credit rating and we get it soon. It opens up a great number of avenues for us to pursue local projects. We can make some changes down the road, but I'm going to go ahead and move staff's recommendation.
And I will second, and I just want to add to the fact that, you know, the prior board members have been working on these policies for a long period of time. And I do respect what Supervisor Valle said, that Alameda County is at the point where they're at with a great rating because they've been very mindful in the past. So I'm ready to move forward.
Okay, that's a motion by Councilmember Hannan of Newark and a second by Mayor Hernandez of Dublin. And I'm looking for other hands. Let's see. Mike, is your hand still up?
No, sir.
Okay, then Councilmember Harrison of Berkeley.
Yeah, just a quick question. Why did you not have the prior board make this decision then? If you've been talking about it for some time. It's a big decision, and to come to us at our first meeting with us, I think is part of the issue I'm having. Why was this not brought to them?
Yeah, I think we didn't bring it forward because we were not expecting such a robust discussion. I think from our perspective, we view this as sort of a fairly standard change that, you know, all other rated CCAs have made, and we're just preparing ourselves for that that rating process. And you know, in our view, this in no way, shape, or form diminishes any commitment we're making to local development. If anything, the process of getting to a rating as quickly as we possibly can is just going to enhance that. So yeah, maybe we misread things a bit, though. Apparently.
Yeah, I'm going to make a substitute motion that we do have a special meeting of the Finance Committee. And I'm really concerned about what Ms. Sutter had to say. I think we have this board for this is like why we have a local development plan. We have this board so that we listen to the community. And it's just important to me that first thing out the chute, I don't do something that they are not in favor of.
Okay, let's see. Well, first I need to ask, is there a second for the substitute motion? And I see Supervisor Valle's hand raised. Is that your seconding? Yes, okay, so that motion has been seconded. Okay, then also in the queue is Councilmember Lopez.
Thank you. Just for information, what percentage of the current board is new? Or how many members are new out of the total?
7 of 15.
7.
A good chunk.
Out of 15. So just shy of a majority. Okay, thank you. I'll be supporting the substitute motion this evening. Thank you.
Okay, and I'm looking for any other hands in the queue or anybody else want to say anything. So just in terms of this, we do not have on the agenda today the appointment of people to committees. So the next time that could happen is the next board meeting, which is a month from now, the 3rd Wednesday of February. We could schedule a special Finance Committee a week later, like the Wednesday the 24th or thereabouts of February. But I think it's already scheduled for March 10th. Either way, it still comes back to the full board on March 17th, the third Wednesday of March. So either way, we're going to come back to this in March. A special meeting or regular finance committee meeting, it's still coming back to the full board in March, just for clarity. Just want to be clear about that. Which you know, is that's fine, that's okay. So with that clarification, so everybody knows, I see no more hands in the queue, so we do have a substitute motion and a second. So I would ask Mr. Clerk, if we could call the roll on the substitute motion, which is to refer this item to the very next Finance Committee meeting of this body.
Okay. For the substitute motion, Albany?
Abstain.
Okay, 1 second. Berkeley?
Yes.
Dublin?
No.
Fremont?
Yes.
Hayward?
Yes.
Livermore?
Abstain.
Okay, Newark?
No.
Piedmont? No. Pleasanton?
No.
San Leandro?
Yes.
Tracy?
No.
Union City?
No.
Alameda County?
Yes.
Emeryville?
No.
Oakland?
I'm voting no.
Okay, let me just add this up. Okay, 6 yeses. Seven no's. 6 yeses. 7 no's. The measure fails. 7 no's, 2 abstains, and 1 absence.
Okay, thank you for counting those votes. So the appropriate procedure is to go to the original motion, or main motion as it's often called. The main motion, original motion, was to adopt the staff recommendation as we discussed, as it has been presented before us. So I don't see any other hands, so I would ask that we do a roll call vote on this main motion.
Yeah. So the roll call vote on the main motion. Albany?
Yes.
Berkeley?
Yes.
Dublin?
Yes, we're going back to the regular motion, correct?
Yes.
Just to clarify. Thank you.
Fremont?
Abstain.
Hayward?
Yes.
Livermore?
Yes.
Newark?
Yes.
Piedmont? No. Wait, absent?
Absent.
Pleasanton?
Yes.
San Leandro?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Union City?
Yes.
Alameda County?
Yes.
Emeryville?
Yes.
Oakland?
Yes.
The motion passes with 13 yes votes, 1 abstention, and 1 absence.
I would suggest that that we do still plan to hold our Finance and Administration Committee as soon as we can, not waiting until March 10th. So we don't need board action tonight. We do need to appoint those members, but what we'll do is we'll start on our end working to plan for that. And certainly this is a topic that we can further discuss, reserve policy at our executive committee meeting as well.
There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, we're going to go on to the next agenda item. Thank you all for the robust discussion. And let me just note that, or on behalf of the staff and everybody, that with so many new board members, it's great to have this robust and detailed discussion. So appreciate everybody's questions and comments and suggestions. That's actually a great thing, and I appreciate that very much. Next is agenda item 12, I believe. And Nick, who is presenting on this?
I am presenting on this. It's a pretty quick item. So we have, at the outset of the shelter in place in March, EBC took steps to suspend its delinquent accounts and collections policy and its failure to pay policies. Each extension has been for 3 months, and these extensions have largely been in line with the extensions that we've been seeing from the state of California as they are applied to PG&E. PG&E has further extended its policies, and so we are proposing to once again extend the freeze on collections and failure to pay policy for 3 more months, and then in 3 months bring it back and assess whether it makes sense to further extend the suspension.
Okay, do we have any public commenters on this item, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, we do. Well, hold on 1 second. Blair Beekman, and we have Blair Beekman. I'm going to allow him to talk. Blair Beekman, you are unmuted.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thank you for that last item, for the work and efforts of everyone, and I hope our everyday community persons can better weigh in on that item in the future. For this item, I thank you that you'll be doing this, and it's nice, if there's ways to extend eviction moratorium ideas through the summer, and to learn how to practice those things, it's nice that you can do that. And so thank you for this item. I'm interested in how, as a local community agency, you did a really good job to organize work around subsidy issues, and those subsidy policies really helped yourselves be able to create a portfolio this next year that will rely a lot more on renewables instead of the use of brown energy and dirty fuels and the like. And San Jose did not quite fare so well in that way, and I don't think they have quite as sophisticated as and organized as a subsidy system as yourselves do. I think from that, one can assume that possibly San Jose maybe has the option to develop how they can better develop their future, maybe that isn't a subsidy program. And maybe you can learn some lessons from that in the future to create the ideas of different options. I hope they can catch up and want to, make that much of a commitment to renewables in the future. And just to quickly conclude, to offer a few more words about, my big item about how to talk about the future of IPR reports in the year 2023. Thank you for your efforts and patience to hear me out about it. I don't know what exactly 2023 means, and I'm hoping to get some clarification. I don't want to hurt anything. I don't want to exaggerate anything. It could be a number of issues that could include the ending of Diablo Canyon in 2024, or it could be even PG&E's, lack of transparency with their own brown energy issues is somehow affecting how you write your IPR reports of October. I'm just hoping that, there was really strange numbers that you offered for 2023 and that we can learn how to talk about that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for your comments. And I'm not seeing any other members of the public in the queue. Mr. Clerk, any other members signed up for this item?
There are no other speakers for this item.
Okay, so we'll bring it back to the board, and let's see, Supervisor Valle and then Council Member Tiedemann.
Just a quick question. How many delinquent accounts are there?
How many delinquent accounts are there?
I think that was a question that was earlier asked, and I don't have that number at my fingertips, though we can certainly provide that for future context.
Supervisor, would you like, say over a certain aging, so a delinquent account that say is 30 to 60 days overdue is technically speaking overdue, but that's sort of normal course of business. It's really sort of an account that's aged more than 60 or really even 90 days.
More than 90, I think.
Is really starting to think about, okay, that's a really overdue account. Is there any one of those that you would specifically like to see, or just all the information?
Policy is about 90 days, so it's, I'm assuming it's in relation to COVID, and that's the context of my question.
Okay, great. We can provide that.
Thank you. And let's see here. Council member, is it Tiedemann or Tiedemann?
Tiedemann.
Okay.
You got it right the first time.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, my question is, what happens to the unpaid fees that users have racked up once this expires? Are they left, owing a lot of money? And do we have any plan to deal with that?
So we have not actually yet formally taken an action. The policy would be at some point you do write off the bad debt. And so we have not taken a step to write that off. But that would be the step. And prior to that write-off happening, you would want to have an assessment of whether or not you want to seek to collect those funds through a collections agency, or is it just purely a write-off?
And I'll just note that in our March meeting, we anticipate at least providing some more details on our aging. I referenced that briefly earlier. And then at some stage, we have not brought forth a detailed sort of collections plan or process in front of the board. So we will do that sort of to follow. That was something that we were planning to do right before COVID. And obviously with COVID hitting, we really just put that process off.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing that plan. As I know in my discussions on eviction moratoriums, I worry that, we are setting up a system so that people will just face a big debt once the moratorium ends. So I don't want us to create a similar situation.
We do have a program that we are rolling out that is offered in conjunction with the state, focused actually on helping to deal with those arrearages. It's an arrearage management plan. And so is a program wherein a customer can receive up to $7,000 of relief for those arrearages if they make 12 months of payments on time in a row.
Thank you. Just a question. I mean, Nick, we all assume that all our delinquent accounts, whether they're residential or even some commercial, are because of lack of resources. They're very low income people going through some struggling times.
Yeah.
Or a business that is have to close and they're going through struggling times. Is there any small subset of delinquent accounts that don't fall in the low income, struggling financially category? Is that possible? Or likely?
Absolutely. I don't think we can sort of uniformly say that the only people who are not paying are sort of falling that category. I think certainly that represents a large percentage of them, but that's not that is not a uniform finding, and that it's going to be different with commercial and residential as well. So now it might be more small businesses unable to pay, but before that it might have just been a business that decided not to pay.
Right. So because of that, and again, I'm talking about after COVID, after the COVID emergency is over, whenever that is, if there is a way at that time for us to accurately identify which of the delinquent customers are just screwing us and have the money and always have, versus the bulk that are truly going through difficult times or went through difficult times. If we can ascertain that in the future, I would suggest that we go after the ones through collection agency of the ones who are screwing us, excuse my language, and set aside and forgive the ones who went through difficult financial or are going through difficult financial times. We don't need to make this decision now, but that's the way ideally we would think to go forward.
Dan, I think our big challenge is being able to differentiate, right? I would love to say, oh, I know this person is going through hard times and I know this person is not, but it's nearly impossible to make that differentiation. There's certainly some analysis we can do around census tracts and whether or not they're care customers. But
yeah, I get it. And maybe even if we're lucky and we're able to identify 3 people or businesses who we want to collect the money from, and deservedly so, and hold them up as examples, But that's a time we could talk about that as we're leaving COVID, which could be several months away. So, but anyway, that's just the thought I'm having. It's an obvious thought, but you're right. It's hard to implement. I get that. Okay, Councilmember Patino.
Hi, thank you, Councilmember Cobb. We all know people in our communities that are hurting right now, businesses, our own residents, and I'd really like to commend this board and EBCE for stepping up and showing the compassion during this time. We've all, like I said, we all know people and businesses that are suffering. Some businesses I know that are just on their last, maybe 2 weeks of cash on hand and barely trying to make things work. So, I'd like to commend all of us for, stepping up not only here, but in our own communities to help out, and for EBCE doing the grants to help out too, earlier last year. So, and with that, I'd like to move for the extension of the payment policy suspension at this time.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
And was that Kate, the first person?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so a motion by Councilmember Patino of Union City, a second by Councilmember Harrison of Berkeley. I see no other hands raised. I think we already took public comment on this. So we'll ask for a roll call vote.
Yes. Albany.
Yes.
Berkeley.
Yes.
Evelyn.
Yes.
Fremont.
Yes.
Hayward.
Yes.
Livermore.
Yes.
Newark.
Yes.
Piedmont. Pleasanton.
Yes.
San Leandro.
Yeah.
Tracy.
Yes.
Union City.
Yes.
Alameda County.
Yes.
Emeryville.
Yes.
Oakland.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes. Passes unanimously with attendance.
Excellent. Okay, and now we're on to.
So let me ask a quick question here. It's 7:30. We've been going for 2.5 hours. This next item is a really important item, but it is also an informational item. So this item is an overview of our local development activities, and we've been having, I think, a lot of the dialogue we had about our reserve policy was about the degree to which those changes may have some sort of a detrimental effect on our local development commitments. And for many of you, this may be your first really in-depth opportunity to see all the local development and local investment that EBC is making in clean energy. So I for one think we should absolutely proceed, but I also want to recognize that we're 2.5 hours in, and this could well be a 45-minute to an hour item between the presentation and the discussion. So before we started, I wanted to put that out there and see what the response may be.
Councilmember Harrison.
Yeah, and I really want to read the 47-page report in full, because this is one of the most exciting things that this agency does. And I haven't had a chance to do that. We had a council meeting last night. We'll have one tomorrow night also. So I don't know what it would do to your schedule though, Nick, if we put off discussion of this. I don't know how other people feel about that, but I'm not really prepared to have any substantive, input.
We certainly can just, this is not there's no action required here. This truly is an informational item and an educational item. So we can certainly have this covered at our next board meeting, recognizing that there's going to be other items there. So we might end up having a quite long evening in February so that we have a shorter meeting today. But, that's why I'm bringing it up though. So.
Also got up early for inauguration, frankly. So.
Let's see, Supervisor Valle.
Yeah, I'd vote to defer the item as well. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Hannan.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we don't really need a motion, but that's okay. We have a motion and a second, so that's okay. Actually, I don't think we need a motion. I have to call the chair. I could just say we're going to defer it, right? So unless there's, I think that's fine. So I'm going to ask that we defer this to our next full board meeting. But by all means, people are encouraged to read the information that in the packets and any attachments. And if you have any follow-up questions, you could send them to Nick, who will send them to JP, and happy to get those answered to you before the next meeting if need be. Okay, so I am at the chair's discretion, continuing this item to our informational item to our next board meeting, which is February something, 17th or so. And I believe, is that our last substantive item?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I'm going to now, just at the chair's discretion, I want to acknowledge Stephanie Cabrera. Did I pronounce Stephanie, did I pronounce your last name correctly? I believe I did.
Yes, Cabrera is close.
Yes, my apologies. So I want to just acknowledge Stephanie has been our clerk or executive clerk. I don't remember, your titles have changed a little bit a couple of times from the very beginning. In fact, as some of you know, and some of you don't know, Stephanie was very involved assisting the entire initial advisory committee of over 40 people before the JPA was created, when Supervisor Haggerty, his staff, and the planning department, the county planning department staff were helping us kind of do all the due diligence and discuss. And Stephanie worked for the county at that time, and she got so excited about EBCE that she took the job with us at the beginning. And we are so very fortunate to have had her working for us since the beginning. And unfortunately, while this is exciting news for her, it's bittersweet news for us. We are losing her. She'll be moving to an exciting position at the clerk of the board of, I think, Santa Cruz County. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes, so that's exciting. Being the clerk of a board of soups in our state is a big deal, a well-deserved promotion, if you will, for Stephanie. But we will miss her greatly, and I just want to, on behalf of all of us who've been on the board for a number of years, I just want to thank you, Stephanie, for your tremendous, great work. You've been always a great source of information and making sure that we are able to run the meetings, that get prepared for the meetings. There are so many things you've done. I don't even know all those things, but I know you did them well. So I just want to give you my great thanks. Nick, and I'll allow other board members to speak as well. Nick, I don't know if we have any kind of certificate, but we should create one and put a little plaque, a little frame around it, and make sure Stephanie gets it before she leaves, if you wouldn't mind doing that. Thank her for her great work here. And if any other board members would like to say a few words to those of you who've worked with her over the past few years, would be a time to do so. Councilmember Hannan.
Yes, I haven't worked with Stephanie for that long, just maybe about a year, but I love public employees who are so responsive. Anytime I gave Stephanie a call or had an issue as to how this works and the documentation that I need to get prepared, she was always extremely responsive, always courteous, and always seemed to enjoy what she was doing day in and day out. And that's the classic sign of an outstanding public employee. So thank you for all the good work you've done for us. And I know that Santa Cruz is going to welcome you with open arms. Good luck to you.
Okay, and I see Supervisor Valle.
Yeah, muchas gracias, Senora. I didn't know that you were bilingual until you and I had a meeting here at the county supervisors. And then you launched your career here and then joined this organization. Gracias por todo y que te vaya bien.
Igual, muchas gracias, supervisor. Ha sido encantado trabajar con usted. Gracias. And saying that thank you. It's been such an honor and a pleasure to work for EBCE, watching it grow from an idea to fully functioning. Thank you to the board members that have been here since the beginning, those joining us. I'm looking forward to seeing the amazing things that come out of EBCE with all of your leadership. Thank you for these opportunities.
Thank you again. And Mayor Martinez.
Thank you. Stephanie, I was so thrilled when you came over from the county to help get EBCE onto its feet. And you have done so with such just your presence in the meeting has always been very organized and calm under every circumstance. And that's so thank you. Good luck to you. And I hope we see you around again.
You. It's been great working with you, and I can officially say it now. You are the coolest. So thank you. Thank you.
Who's going to say that now?
I know. I'll put that in the instructions.
I'm just going to change my name on the screen.
Okay, Mayor Hernandez, please.
No, Stephanie, definitely you will be greatly missed, and I've always enjoyed being with you, and especially in our live meetings in Hayward. But I also wanted to wish you the best of luck. And also, you always ran every meeting with such professionalism. And I really appreciate keeping us all organized. And buena suerte.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And Councilmember Kick.
I am here as an alternate for Trish Monroe tonight. She was unable to be with us due to a family situation, but I know that she would like to say goodbye and to thank you for your work. So passing on a thanks and congratulations and good luck from Trish. And nice to meet you. Sorry I don't get to work with you from me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank Councilmember Monroe from Livermore. Mayor May.
Yes, real quickly, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Stephanie, for your professionalism and the ability to focus us on the agenda. I know at times it must seem like you're herding cats with all of the things that are going on, but I really appreciate the ability to organize us, and that's not easy on so many difficult and differing opinions and tasks, and also the community members, and allowing everyone to feel that they had the opportunity to be a participant and also to be heard. So thank you so much, and I wish you all the best in your future endeavors and continued success wherever you go. And
Mayor May.
Thank you. And Councilmember Patino.
Yes, I'd like to really congratulate you. I've just started my third year here on EBCE, and you were great getting me up to speed. My office was actually right around the corner on 19th and Franklin. I remember I said, well, let me just go over there and we'll say, you know, this pre-COVID, of course. And it went so much faster. And I felt I was prepared for that first meeting in Hayward after talking to you a couple of times, sending some emails, getting me meeting with Nick. But you know, Santa Cruz isn't that far. Actually, that's part of my territory for my day job. So after COVID's over, I may, if I'm in the area, I may hit you up. So
absolutely, please do.
Lunch or something.
And I'll still be checking my parents' bills, so I'll be involved with EBCE.
Okay, best of luck. Buena suerte.
Muchas gracias.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands raised for this effort here. Again, Stephanie, thank you so much for all your help for the organization, for me as I've been chair for the past year and a half. Really appreciate it. You've always been so thoughtful, reliable, thorough, and helpful, and many other positive words that I just can't think of off the top of my head. So thank you so much. Wish you all the best in your new job. It's very exciting. You're going to do great, and you're always welcome to come back to board meetings. I don't know why you would, but you're always welcome to come back to board meetings if you want to have some fun. So thank you again, and I don't see anything. What? Maybe there's somebody. Jessica Tovar, why don't you? I think she has her hand raised in the attendee box. Let's let her talk.
Hi, on behalf of East Bay Clean Power Alliance, we're sad to see Stephanie go. I let some folks know today and they were really, really sad. So I just wanted to share that. Appreciate her. We've known her since her time working for Alameda County and, working with us through that giant steering committee in the beginning that led to the formation of East Bay Community Energy. And I personally have always envied Stephanie's ability to multitask in very chaotic situations. So I just want to appreciate her. And that's it. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you, Jessica. Appreciate those words as well. Okay, Nick, anything you'd like to share on this?
No, I mean, Stephanie, I don't need to. I think Stephanie and I will have our own conversation. So, it's been an amazing pleasure to work with you, though.
Okay.
Thank you. Great. Yes, he's been very kind to let me know.
Thank you again, Stephanie, and we wish you the best. And when's your last day officially with EBCE?
Friday, but I will pop into the executive committee meeting.
Okay, great. Appreciate that.
You are in great hands. Yes. So I doubt I'll even be needed that day.
We do appreciate your help with the transition. That's very helpful. Thanks so much for that.
I just wanted to just share one point. So our executive committee meeting is next Friday. So not this coming Friday, but the following Friday. And, it is open to all board members. So, there are 3 executive committee members and there are 2 open seats that will be appointed in our February meeting. But, by all means, if you will receive the agenda, and if you take a look at that agenda and those are topics that you're interested in digging into more deeply, I think especially during this early educational period, we are going to be going into some things related to our renewable energy procurement as an example. So, that might be an opportunity if you're so inclined to learn some more about what we're doing there.
Okay, and now is the time. Thank you again, Stephanie, so much. And now is the time for all board members or any other staff for any important announcements to share with the board and the public. So if I see any hands raised, I will call on people. I see Mayor Martinez.
I'll keep it brief, but I just want to welcome all of our new members, and I really appreciate the robust discussion that happened tonight. I am not fearful that we're not going to have anything to talk about in our meetings, and I really look forward to all of you taking part in our committee meetings where the real meat of these issues happen. And I can tell from the comments tonight that there's a real appetite to dig in. So I just want to appreciate you at our first meeting, and I look forward to working with you more.
Thank you, Diane. And let's see, I don't see any other hands raised. So I'll just say thank you all again for being here. Concur with all the comments that Diane just made. Appreciate all the new board members volunteering to be on this agency. It often can be an exciting agency, a very important agency in terms of our shared effort throughout the county and each of our cities to address the climate crisis we have throughout the region, the state, the country, the entire planet, as we know. And once again, happy Inauguration Day. And thank you all. And this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Bye. Good night, everyone.